Hello, hello, hello. Welcome in, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of 50 Toasts. This week we got Roy Wood Jr., who I believe you can see right here. I'm looking very forward to talking to Roy.
Oh,
Schedule wise, we're doing this on Tuesday nights now, Tuesday nights at 9. My schedule, sort of during the course of the week, is write football jokes as much as I can all the time. Best place to find those is the All Pro Lines Twitter feed. Come join us at All Pro Lines at All Pro Lines on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It's been a blast, man. We've been only doing it about 6 weeks. We got a ton of followers. It's been great. People are jumping in and writing jokes, and it's really been fun. So come join us. Mondays in this space, we're doing Quick Snaps, the podcast, at about 7:30 before the Monday night game. We might move that this week pending the other Monday night game. We'll figure out the scheduling on that. And next week in this space, Tuesday, Jason Hofsetz, one of the producers from the Bob and Tom Show, buddy of mine. He produced one of my albums, and he's a great editor. He's got a bunch of cool stories about being there behind the scenes of Bob and Tom. Go to Patreon, type in Costaki, and figure out how to join and support this kind of programming. And that's it. Let's talk to Roy Wood Jr. How are you, man?
hey, was that too loud? Am I too
No,
loud? Am I too
no,
excited?
no. It's on brand. That's good.
It's good, man. Good to see you, man. It's fucking
Very
been a
funny
while.
comic. Great stand-up comic. I felt like there was a little, distant kinship between us. I sort of was a kid knocking around telling jokes from Atlanta, and you were a kid knocking around telling jokes from Birmingham, and we
Yeah,
crossed paths a
man.
little bit here and there.
Crossing paths at the old Monday open mic at the Punchline.
That's right. That's been a
On
long time ago. You must have
fucking
been really
Roswell
young.
Road, bro.
You must have
Roswell
been.
Road.
What were you, like 16 at that point?
I was
You were.
19. I was
Were you really?
19 when I started, but I weighed like 175. I weigh like 250 now, but I was like 6'2", 175, just sticks in a suit. And yeah, so I looked like 14. It's quite
That's right.
possible.
That's right.
But yeah, man, those were good times, man. I'd be lying if I said I didn't miss the road, to some degree. I think I miss people. I don't know if I miss the road per se, like long drives and all of that shit. I don't miss that.
Right.
But in terms of just the actual being out and interacting with people in the club, yeah, I fucking miss that shit, man.
I miss it a lot, man. I even miss some of the
Yeah.
trappings that I didn't think I'd miss. I miss some of the driving and that spirit of like, I got to get these cattle to Idaho. There ain't nobody else going to do that this week. I gotta get out there and do it.
I think part of why I don't miss that part of it is because over the course of 2020, I've driven 12 hours and back to Detroit, and I've done 15 and a half to Birmingham and back from New York.
Oh goodness, yeah,
So I got the driving shit out of my system.
you
And
got
it's
that.
weird. The whole time I'm in the car, I'm thinking like it was fucking crazy that I would do this every other day. Some days, literally every
I
other
know.
day, I would drive 10 hours, 8 hours, just whatever the run was.
I
Like
know.
that would,
It's hard to even describe that to non-comics. Like, you're doing what? You're doing
yeah.
what? Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a lot, but like you go like Birmingham to Memphis for a couple days, and then you go Memphis to Little Rock. That's 2 hours. That's not a big deal. Then you go Little Rock to Oklahoma City, a little further, not a big deal. Then Oklahoma City to Wichita. That's easy. But then you look up, and on Monday morning, you're in Wichita, but you fucking live in Birmingham. And now you've got a 12-hour rip back to the crib. Like
That's right.
that, the drive back at the end of the week was always the hardest one, but the little piecemeal hopscotching along the way, that was a little more tolerable.
Right. Yeah,
I
that's
don't know
right.
if I have the attention span for it now. And then I also have a 4-year-old, so I have to drive at night. So the heel shut the fuck up along the way. And so
I hear you,
it's
man.
weird.
I hear you. Yeah. So you've come a long way. I mean, your list of credits is ridiculous now. But the big one, the one I want to talk to you about off the top, is the Daily Show. Tell me how that came to be.
So Trevor Noah takes over for Jon Stewart summer of 2015. Well, fall of 2015. And they were looking for new correspondents. A lot of people started going their own way when John left. Jason Jones went to do the Detour sitcom on TBS. Samantha Bee was kicking off her show. John Oliver at that point, Oliver I think had already left and was doing Last Week Tonight. I think that was like maybe he was going into maybe year 1 or year 2 of that show. Colbert was doing his thing. So there were a lot of roster spots to fill. Let's just put it that way. And so, Neil Brennan, Trevor Noah and Neil Brennan were having a conversation. Neil brought up my name. That was enough to get me the audition, and I booked it. And so, that was that. But it was really dope. It came at a time where I felt like career-wise, I was a little adrift. I was coming off of a canceled TBS show. I wasn't really booking much acting work in LA at the time. And, if I'm going to be honest, like I was doing some stuff for ESPN, but that shit doesn't pay, not for comedians. It's great visibility and it was helping me on the road. But in terms of figuring out what's the next, how do I go from here to here? I was trying to kind of figure things out. And so, the opportunity just kind of came around at the right time. And so thankfully they get what I'm trying to do and I'm able to take what they want to do and apply my sensibilities of humor to it.
Right. Yeah. So obviously, big chunks of what you do on that show, you've trained your whole life for as a comic and some of the other things that you've cross-trained to get there, but it's still a different skill set. Where do you get the chops to do that kind of thing? And I have the same question about acting because you were acting at a pretty high level pretty early. Where'd you get those chops? Where did all these chops come from?
I just took classes, man. I started stand-up 98. I moved to LA 07. And the first thing I did when I got to LA was start taking classes and just never stopped, as much as I could, balance acting classes with the road and shit like that. I just always did that. Also, I have a degree in broadcast journalism. So I kind of had the cheat code for the Daily Show where I understood the journalistic aspect of it. And I did morning radio for, well over 10, 12 years. And then I just kind of happen to do comedy. So it's kind of the perfect.
Right.
So, I understood the reporter part of it, but also understood the jokes of it. So, I think ultimately that's what helped me out.
That's cool. And what about the acting? How did you get acting chops so early on?
I don't know, man. I've been blessed enough to get cast in enough shows where I feel like I'm just playing versions of myself. I would encourage anybody that's interested in acting, just find different ranges of yourself. Calm Roy, really excited Roy, subdued Roy, just apply that to any particular character or just kind of angry and like, because when I'm on Space Force, I'm just kind of this guy. Like, it's not that, me, it's not that different. I'm not Jamie Foxx. I'm not transforming into fucking Ray or like when he played the the homeless person dealing with mental illness who was like this amazing classical musician or whatever. Like, I'm not like Jamie Foxx transforms. That's acting. I'm just being ranges of myself.
Yes,
so,
right.
I would not gonna put myself up there with Chadwick or Anthony Mackie or some shit.
Right. I was really blown away one time when I was hanging with Lewis Black. I worked with him in South Carolina years ago, and he's a really gentle, kind soul off stage. So the character's a little bit, like, oh, he's doing a character. And then one night he had a couple glasses of wine, and somebody was saying something that was really pissing him. Both of his parents are educators, and it was this sort of anti-education rant that the club owner was making, and he kind of laid into him, and it was exactly the character that we see on. I'm like, oh, that's just a little slice of who he is. He just pulls the slice out and does that well on stage. Right.
Our personalities are on this dial, and you just pick the dial that best matches whatever it is you're auditioning for, and either they like it or they don't. It's not much more you can do beyond that. Of course, there's technical aspects to acting in terms of looking like you're listening and give a fuck about what your scene partner is doing. Like, there's technical X's and O's, of course, that you have to learn. But outside of that, for me, I'm just trying to be some version of myself. I can't. That's just never. I'm not gonna. I've been watching Chris Rock and Fargo this year, and it's the most un-Chris Rock I've ever seen Chris Rock, which makes it so amazing. But there isn't a smidget of Chris Rock on screen, and versus when you see Chris Rock in Lethal Weapon 4, or fucking bad. Even Chris Rock slipped out a little bit in New Jack City. Like, even then, you get. little bit of Chris Rock, but like I look at that and I go, I can't do that.
Yeah, right.
At least
That's
not
interesting.
yet. Maybe
Right.
one day, just not right now.
So, were there any of the technical aspects of the job with the Daily Show that were hard, like dealing with reading teleprompters or the nature of turning around and getting the thing nailed down and practicing it and getting the words in your mouth quickly? Like, what was the hardest part?
The teleprompter was a little awkward because you're reading and performing. So the way I tried to offset that was to know the script by heart as much as I could. If I had my stuff memorized, it gave me the confidence to improvise a little bit. And I think that's where the Daily Show really, really excels, is in giving the performers space to improv. The hardest part of the Daily Show, I would say, is doing the actual interviews as a correspondent and being in the room with someone and they're instantly giving you something that you need to be reacting to and picking up on that while also keeping the conversation centered on the issue at hand.
Oh,
Because
right.
essentially what you're doing in an interview, like people try to act like it's some sort of gotcha expose. No, I'm just asking you why you think what you think, and whatever you say, I'm free to react to, but it's just an opportunity to talk to people who have a different view on something. And so if you
Right.
go, the sky is green, I'm going to sit down and go, okay. And you're sure it's not blue? No, it's green. Okay. But is it a pine green? Is it a aqua green? Like, and that's me kind of being silly, but I'm still staying in your truth and getting you to go a little bit deeper. So that's the stuff you have to be able to play with on the fly and really come up with. And that's the stuff that generally pops the biggest. I mean, the greatest example to me in terms of the people that we have on staff right now, I'd say, and he's the most senior of all of us, is Jordan Klepper. Jordan Klepper does segments that are primarily man on the street with a lot of people who are going to say something that's a little atypical. Let's just put it that way. I'm not going to say it's crazy. I don't want to dismiss people like that, but you hold a point of view that is extremely minority.
All right.
You're extremely in the minority on this point of view. And he can just react, and it's not written because you didn't know that somebody was going to say something that wild to your face. And that's the stuff you can't train for. And that's the only way to prepare for that, is to be as knowledgeable as you can on the issue and the things happening in the world, because all of those things pour in to inform the
Right.
conversation that you're going to have with someone.
Right. Now, in a situation like that, you've got you got what, 75 minutes of tape, and you're looking for 75 good seconds. Is that what ends up happening with something like that?
Yeah, something like, if it's man on the street, generally, if you're man on the street, you're going out and asking a single question to multiple people, and you're stringing together multiple answers to the same question. So that's pretty straightforward. Whereas if you and I are having an actual sit down about something, then we have to look at the story as a whole and figure out what are the beats that are most important and where are the facts in the story, and what people that we've interviewed in the story do we want to receive those facts from. And so, you may sit with someone for an hour to get the 6 or 7 minutes that you end up using. Or in the case of Man on the Street, we literally might talk for 90 seconds and we use 30 seconds of it. And for as long as we've represented what your overall opinion is to be on the issue, then, when you're editing, you just have to edit. You have to edit for time, the same as every other news organization. Nobody's showing full raw interviews.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's interesting, man. That's cool. Uh,
Yeah.
how do you miss stand up, or do you sometimes feel like, I finally graduated into a different thing that I like, with it's less of a pain in the ass? Or what's your relationship with stand up now?
I don't know, bro. Like, I know I want to keep doing it, but I'm not in a rush to get back on stage. And part of that's because I've been lucky enough to be able to have some opportunities to get into writing. So that's something that I haven't always had a chance to explore. And that's a whole nother avenue of creative expression. And I think as entertainers, I don't think any entertainer is beholden to one box. I think we all want like every athlete wants to be a rapper, every rapper wants to act, every actor wants to model, every model wants to be a comedian, every radio DJ wants to be like it's just a musical chairs of oh, I want to direct now, and every writer wants to perform, and every you're a Broadway dancer, yeah, but I also compose music on the set. Like everybody has these 1A and 1B priorities, and the pandemic has given me an opportunity to explore some of those 1Bs. And while I have the time now, without the temptation of going back on stage, I'm focusing as much as I can on this, which is just writing and figuring out a production infrastructure for other media projects that I want to put together. And by doing that, when it's time to do stand up again, then maybe these projects would have helped pour into the stand up.
Right.
I think at the end of the day, as a performer, your days are numbered in Hollywood. As a creator and a writer, you got a long time. You for as long as you have good ideas, there's someone out there that'll want to execute them. But in terms of just being on camera, that's one of the smallest windows of all the jobs in Hollywood.
Right.
So for me, I'm not as obsessed. I'm not even as obsessed about being on camera anymore. Like all of that, I can't book no acting work. When's I'm gonna get another audition? Versus I have 4 fucking ideas to write and I don't know which script to start on. That's a
Nice.
much better problem to have
Yeah.
than
Right.
my agent can't get me no auditions for all the black people parts in the movies. Who gives a fuck? But stand up stand up is the one thing they can't take from you when everything else is gone. Stand up is the one thing that remains yours until you die.
That's right.
Every comedian you can name, whether you like them or not, they all died with dates on the books.
Unless it was this year.
Unless it was this year, you probably didn't have any dates on the books. And
Yeah,
all
that's
of them, Carlin, fucking Joan Rivers, fucking Dick Gregory,
sure.
fucking Cosby went to jail. He still had dates.
Yeah,
Like
that's right.
that's the goal is to always have people that will want to come and see you live. And that's what I'm hoping everything that I'm choosing to focus on now helps to pour into down the road. Time will tell, but
Right.
that's the plan.
Yeah, I've read somewhere you're doing a thing now. Jefferson County probation. Is that one of the projects you're working on?
Yeah. So that's a pilot we shot for Comedy Central. We're still waiting to hear back from Viacom if they want to pick it up. But yeah, we're vibing on 101 different ideas as much as I can. I sold something to HBO Max with a young woman, Danny Fernandez, about her struggles with depression and just how much suicide and depression are adjacent to humor in that sense, which sounds crazy, but from that sadness comes some of the funniest shit in the world. So I think that, we have an opportunity, or I have an opportunity with the chances that have been afforded to me to talk about issues that are, really relevant. Jeffco Probation is basically a show about it's just exploring the criminal justice system from the eyes of someone who's trying to do the job the right way instead of just always locking people. It's more people on probation than in prison. And so a lot of the people that when you talk about recidivism and people going back to jail over and over again, that's either the PO or the judge that made that singularly. There was no jury involved. It's just
Right.
one dude going, you don't have your shit together, go to jail, versus someone going, you don't have your shit together. Let me see if I can help you get your shit together.
Right.
And just what would, and that's not to say that this person can save everybody, but it's a funny what if to explore. And so that's something that it's really I put that one near and dear to my heart. If we're talking passion projects, that one's definitely at the top of the list. But do I miss stand up? Yes, but it can wait for a minute
Yeah, I got you.
for now.
Yeah, yeah. Your work is when what I've seen you do in a few different media. There's always another level to it. You got some layers, man. Where does that come from? Your dad was a journalist, and you came from a family where people were thoughtful and mulling over some deeper stuff from the beginning?
Yeah, my father was a civil rights journalist, and he did, all the way back into the 50s, Rhodesian Civil War in Africa. He was there as a journalist embedded covering that, sniper fire, the whole nine. He was in South Africa during the riots.
Wow.
He embedded himself with black platoons in Vietnam to cover the racism that black platoons were dealing with.
Wow.
From white superiors, getting shot at, the whole nine, man. And so and this is all before everything that he was doing with the civil rights movement around the same time. And so my father's always cared about issues, and so I grew up around that. So I grew up very well aware of what it means to be black in America, but I also grew up much funnier than my dad. And I grew up in a time where, until high school, essentially I was never in the same school system for more than 2 years. So I was always hopscotching around the city of Birmingham. So humor became a defense mechanism to make friends and icebreaker. So I saw that as an easy weapon to employ to get people to listen. And then you get bit by the desire of comedy, and comedy, laughter is great because there's a manipulation aspect to it that I think is very arrogant, that I don't think a lot of performers are willing to admit. But there's a level of arrogance to be able to walk on stage, stare a stranger in the eye, and go, "I'm going to make you fucking laugh," and there's nothing you can do about it.
It's a pretty strange way to make a list. Yes.
It's fucking insane, and it's extremely arrogant. It's an extreme. Neil Brennan said, like, you just got to be crazy to walk into a room full of strangers and go, "Hey, everybody, be quiet. I've got something. I got something you need to hear. You're gonna like this." So
it is amazing that it works as well as it does. You'd think, given the ingredients and the construct, that it would flop more often than it does.
Bro,
it definitely
it's fucking
does.
crazy town.
But
it's crazy town that it works, but it does. And so I think that it puts us in a situation where I started being funny, but then the older I got, you're 19, you're talking about nothing. You've been through nothing. And as I started matriculating through life, and you start having experiences, and you start taking in the newspaper and looking around at the world a little more, you go, wait a minute, things are kind of fucked up. I wonder if I could sneak a joke in and then remind you things are kind of fucked up without you feeling like I preached to you.
Yeah, right.
All right, let's give it a try. And so that's kind of where the level of the problem, though, on the road as a road comic is that most people on the road ain't trying to hear that shit, bro. So you're playing Paducah, Kentucky on a Thursday night, and I know you know the gig. Shout out to Froggies or Froggers if they're still open. It's been a decade since I played there, but a country western bar that does comedy on Thursdays, they don't give a fuck about your jokes about fucking police reform. Like they don't.
Yeah.
But if you couch that joke between a joke about barbecue and a joke about college football,
yeah, right. It's doable.
They'll give you that little pocket to go into your little blackety black shit there. But So my act became this oscillation between the jokes I really wanted to do and the jokes that would get me rebooked at Froggies so I could keep paying my bills next year.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I remember even as a high school kid, there's sort of a bell that went off. I was listening to George Carlin. I was like, oh, if you're funny enough, you earn the right to also tell them how you feel about the world, And I always liked that.
Yeah. I watched a lot of Sinbad growing up. I watched some Carlin, but it was only on HBO free preview weekends. But definitely a lot of Sinbad. Because he was clean and actually came on TV a lot more regularly than fucking Carlin did.
Well, I listened to a piece you did on NPR a few years ago, and it was really impressive, man. I mean, some of the points. It's been a long time ago, but I remember at the end of it thinking, I'm fucking proud of that guy. That was a really thoughtful interview.
Well, fucking thank you, man.
Yeah.
Thank you, man. Terry Gross is good people, man. She has interesting enough questions that'll have you reflect. That's one of those interviews where you leave the interview and you like call your mom. Did you not raise me right? What was wrong? Why was I almost crying on the interview, Joyce?
Joyce. Is that mom's name?
That's mom's name.
That's funny. I talked to Al Jackson a little bit about race. I sort of backed into, I don't know if everyone wants to hear the story again, but super briefly to catch you up. I ended up talking to Brian Miller, who's a great friend of mine and a comic in Minneapolis, the week that Minneapolis burned to the ground. And he literally had a house where there were, riots and chaos and National Guardsmen on his street. So we talked for a while about what he had sort of seen that week. And then at the end, we were sort of discussing like, well, what do we do now? We're kind of knocking it around. And my mom, Marge, my Joyce, watched it. And she goes, 2 white guys talking about social what are you doing? My mom kind of gave me some shit. So the next week, I ended up talking to Al Jackson, and he was great. He was very thoughtful, and we knocked around some stuff. And I also talked to Ted Lyde. I don't know if you know Ted. Is he a great comic? He's a little ahead of your time. He was a comic in Chicago for years. He's been in LA for a long time. And I talked to an angry black woman who was on my Facebook page who was just frustrated and wanted me to talk to her. And I drug my feet for a while, and I said, fuck it. One of the things I'm trying to do is listen to what people have to say. Let's do it. And she was great.
Good shit.
Yeah. So here's my question for you. One of the things I talked to Al about was, I said, is there a fair parallel? Because it seems to me, and I'm asking because I'm trying to learn, as a white guy, I feel like there's a bit of a social parallel in the last year or so to the Me Too movement. It was like, as a guy, I just assumed that some guys were assholes. There was a tiny percentage of asshole men. And then when you have a big social conversation about what women are actually going through and dealing with men, you're like, oh, it's a much bigger percentage than I thought. This is definitely a bigger issue than I had any idea about. And I feel like culturally, we're kind of having a version of that with the white and black relationship, and especially with the police officers. Is that a fair parallel in your mind?
I think the biggest difference between the Me Too movement and the fight for police reform is that there's far more sweeping, agreed upon incidents of police misconduct that as a whole, the public acknowledge, yes, that happened to you, and that is fucked up, Mr. Rodney King. Here is your money. Yes, that happened to you. We're very sorry. Detroit riots. Yes, that happened to you, and we are very sorry, Mr. Trayvon Martin. Like there have been enough mile markers where I feel like societally we go, yeah, that is an issue. What are we going to do about it? Versus where I feel like where a lot of the Me Too is concerned is that women went, hey, stop doing this. And we went, what? People been doing that? There was no Detroit riot. There was no Rodney King. There were no blatant incidents that I could name as an ignorant ass man that had the same gravity as anything that's happened with police reform issues where black people are going, we've been trying to tell you, look back at this. We've been trying to tell you, look back at this. We've been trying to tell you, look all the way back. When you look at the Me Too movement, they can go, yes, this has been going on. And then women from decades and decades and decades ago all go, hey, listen to us. We are telling you what is happening. And then also, here's where the solutions lie. And I think that's where, even if the origin points of these two issues are a little bit different, or the ignition point of the conversations are different, I think where the similarities lie is that the solutions, to some degree, it's twofold. If there are solutions to be had, then the people that have suffered from it are to be part of those discussions and groups and panels, etc.
Yes.
You see an all-white panel on diversity, the shit's a little weird to see on TV. The other similarity is that there also has to be a level of desire for self-education from members of the parties that have been doing the wrongdoing. You know, as a man, it's not a woman's job to educate me on every single thing that I need to be getting right. There's plenty of places where I can go get the information and seek out the people who are doing the work to educate men, or I can just listen to what, like, it's not a woman's job. Whereas with race, it's also, I don't feel like it's a black person's job. There are black people who do it and choose to do it. So you have to go find them. But it's not every single black person's responsibility to shoulder the race conversation with people that are like yourself, anxious to be a part of the solution. There's plenty of good white people out there. That's documented. That's a fucking true statement. So with the people who want to go, how can I help? What can I do? Then you have to find the people within that wronged group that are bringing that knowledge. And they're not hard to find. It's a couple Google searches. It's a couple of quick book reading lists that people could lay in your lap that'll get you at least to second base when it comes to being a part of the solution. So I just think that the work lies with the people that are in the majority that are, you know, that are being accused of the wrongdoing. And I think that's where I think a lot of the conversation gets lost, because we're asking people that are still going through the trauma to help them help me solve what's still currently happened to you. Everybody ain't built the same. It's no different than feminism. Every woman isn't the same type of feminist or as open and willing to share her survivor story as the next woman. So the woman that's a little more timid and more recoil, you're going to drag her up out of her trauma. Tell me what the fuck happened and how I can keep it from happening.
Yeah,
That ain't the one you want to talk to.
Right.
Talk to the one that's at the podium. You know, those are the ones that aren't hesitant to present solutions to the issues. So I would say that, you know, there's similarities in that I believe that the solutions lie through the same process of dialogue and listening and doing the work on yourself. I think that's probably, to me, that's where the biggest similarities lie between, you know, racism and equality and police reform and Black Lives Matter. If you want to, you know, position it parallel to the Me Too movement, I think the similarities are more in what the possible paths to solutions are than the original flashpoints for the respective movements.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay.
You know, yeah.
I just, to me, it was an obvious parallel, because I was kind of shaken in both sort of social conversations by how much deeper the problem is than I was aware, and I was embarrassed that I didn't know it more in both cases. And I've also been shaken somewhat by the resistance to change in both of those situations.
Yeah.
I can't believe how much resistance there is to get our shit right.
Bro, like even
the simple stuff. People hate Colin Kaepernick. It's so weird. It's hard to talk about Colin Kaepernick in a comedy environment. That's how much resistance there is.
Bro, you bring up his name at a comedy club, it's the same as saying the words abortion or gun control.
It's weird.
Split the room immediately.
Right.
Just off saying his name, you split the room.
Right. And again, I mean, we don't have to go into all the details, but he's just a guy who's trying to stand for people who aren't being hurt. Like, he's not even doing anything that should be controversial.
You're saying him taking a knee was disrespecting the troops when it was fucking troops that told him to take a knee instead of sitting down for the fucking anthem, which is what he was doing in the first fucking.
That's right.
There's nothing I can even say about Kaepernick that Dave Chappelle hasn't already murdered. God bless Dave. He walks on stage and just burns every topic to no other comedian can touch.
That is the greatest compliment. When you're working on a premise and you see somebody else do it really well, and you're like, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore.
That topic's over with. I saw Jim Gaffigan, bro. Gaffigan did like 6-7 minutes on bacon on one of his albums.
Right.
Just bacon. he broke down bacon layer by layer, bacon bits, bacon wrap, bacon cheeseburgers, bacon as a dessert, like just fucking boom, napalmed it. I was
Yeah.
like, all right, I just like Gaffigan's so good. I really don't even fuck with food humor
I
because
know,
I
right?
just
He's like as the whole ketchup. There's like so many subcategories. You're like, yeah, he's
yeah,
so
as a genre, this is not nah. Gaffigan and Seinfeld will mine a topic to depths
right.
that I envy. I try to take that same approach to like race and social issues and try to find every possible angle on it.
Right.
But you know, that's more difficult though, because sooner or later you're gonna hit a landmine that somebody's gonna be
Of
weird
course.
about some
Of
shit.
course. You know
It's
who else is really
inevitable.
that doesn't get the credit he deserves is Jake Johansson. I mean, so many of those
Yes.
Letterman sets were one subject for the whole to
Yeah.
have one subject to reach the level of a Letterman set in terms of quality and to be able to just talk about toasters all the way. I mean, that's
That's
amazing.
a confidence. Craig Shoemaker too. Because you know he would really hit relationships really hard and would just stay in that pocket over and over and over again,
Oh, right.
set after set. That I don't know. I look at that shit and I'm just like, I can't do that.
Well,
But I
that's
could.
okay.
I
There's so
can't.
many different ways to
Can't
do
do
it,
that.
you know. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
definitely. There's a handful of guys I watch. It always hurts a little. I'm like, oh fuck, I'm never going to be that good at that
Oh yeah,
particular thing,
yeah.
right?
Oh
For
yeah.
sure.
There's always one. You just
Yeah.
dread watching them because you just know you're gonna lose 20 minutes of material by the time you finish watching his set. Michael Che is that guy for me right now. Like,
Oh, Che, I
I
think has
love
the most
Che.
underrated special of the last five years.
Michael
That's
Che matters.
If you
Michael
haven't
Che
seen it,
matters.
go find it because it's all the stuff that we talked about all summer long, way before then, and it's
2
spot
years
on.
prior.
And it's
It's
some
still,
of the most funny and pointed and insightful comedy you'll see.
yeah,
It's great.
yeah. It's also lit beautifully, and I'm jealous. He had some
Ah,
amazing lit.
there's a grown up comics note. Oh man, it's shot so well. Uh, hey, I saw you did Crank Yankers recently-ish, right? The new version. And you did it as
Yeah.
yourself, right?
Yeah, I did 1 or 2 voices. You know, I did prank calls for a decade
That's what I was
for
going to say.
morning radio.
I knew that about you, but people might not know. Tell us about that a little bit.
Shit, man, I'm retired from that shit, bro. I haven't done a new prank call album since 07. And I think I wrote most of that content to like 2012 or 2013. And then none of it you can buy anywhere. I pulled it all off the internet years ago. It was fun. It was cool. I'll say this about Crank Yankers. When that show first came out, that was like my Jerky Boys. Well, the Jerky Boys were my Jerky Boys. But when Crank Yankers came out, I was like, wow, I've been doing this all this time. When you see a national avenue for something you've just been dicking around in a radio station doing in a local market, you go, oh, my jokes matter. I'm on the right path. Like that was one of the first validations of a concept for me. And then, oh, maybe I do have what it takes to move out of my mom's house.
Right.
And that was the thing.
Walk me through that a little bit, because you were in a different sort of subculture than me, and I don't know how that works. I never was in a universe where I would buy an album of prank phone calls. Like where did those go? Like where would you buy something like that?
Bro, I sold those shits in stores on consignment all over Alabama. Sam Goody,
what do you mean
Turtles, Camelot Music. I would walk up to a record store and go, hey, I'm on the radio. These are prank calls. I'm going to advertise the shit on the radio and tell people to come here to buy it. Do you want to carry my shit? And they go, yeah. I give you 20 albums, and then I come back next Monday, and you give me my fucking money, and then I give you 20 more albums to sell. And so that was pretty much what I did all over Alabama for, the first 2 albums. The third one I didn't do
I
it.
can't
It
believe
was,
that worked. That's such a cool
yeah.
model.
Well, because I was on the radio every day. So I have a built-in promotion model. And this is 03, 04, when people are still buying CDs and buying
Right.
physical media. So, I had a bit of an in, and the album sold really well. And then on the road after shows, I would sell CDs. Hey, if you're into prank calls, and prank calls, it's like jazz or fucking wine. There's people out there that fuck with it. It's like, I don't know. It's like fucking threesome gangbang public sex porn. There's weird categories in Pornhub. Somebody's clicking on them.
Yeah.
So prank calls are no different in terms of comedy. That's what prank calls are. Yeah. They're the weird Pornhub category that you never really click on, and then you see a video and it's got 500,000 views. Somebody's into it.
Yeah, that's right.
Somebody's into this shit. So yeah, that's what I did. And years later, that wasn't enough to get me on Crank Anchors the first time, but when they did the reboot a couple years ago, it was enough to get me on there. And so, thankfully it was cool to be a part of. What was really cool was to see the puppet of myself that they made. I thought that was really cool.
That's the first thing I thought when I saw it. I was like, oh, I bet he loves that.
Yeah, I was like, that's pretty fucking cool. And it was pre-COVID. I should have taken him up on the invitation to watch the actual filming of my puppet, but I didn't. I'd already left LA by then.
What do you mean the filming? Oh, you mean when they were doing the...
Yeah, you do the prank calls first. They edit them down, and then when they have the prank to the edited content that they're going to keep for air, then they shoot the puppet.
Gotcha.
The actual puppet back and forth stuff that you see on the actual show. But when we're doing the pranks, it's just you in a room with a bunch of giggling ass producers.
Right.
And they just hand you phone numbers.
But that's a weird skill. Did it feel like riding a bike where you had those chops that you'd worked on all those years that most people don't have, right?
I did by then, but prank calls were no different than, if anything, that's where I might have gotten some of the improv skills for Daily Show, because a prank phone call, you can't script. You can only script the scenario. Like, I'm going to call you. Your daughter punched my daughter at school. Tell your daughter to come outside and fight me. That's all I can script. There's nothing else. What your reaction is, I do not know. But at that point, the game in any prank phone call, the game is impossible request or somehow anger you. That's essentially like, if you take any prank call that you like, it pretty much falls into those 2 categories. I'm going to ask you for something that you cannot give me. And when you say no, I'm going to re-ask or come up with new things on top of that you also can't give me.
Yeah, that's the model of the one I just watched you do. Yeah.
Okay. Or I'm going to call you and go, I want to fight your child. And then you're going to say no. And then we'll go, well, I'm going to fight you. And then if I've done my proper homework, and this is radio, not Crank Anchors. If I've done my homework, because most prank calls I'm doing on the radio, your friends put me up to it. So I know your car. I know where you work. I know the name of your child. I know the color of your house. So it adds a level of personalization. There was a prank call that I did. It's probably still on the internet. I'm going to check real quick while I tell this story. There was a guy who had a boat in his front yard. And so I called the guy. The guy's wife hits me up and she says, hey, if you can, tell him that the boat can't be in the front yard. And so I call, and as a man, that's your prized possession. The boat. You love this boat. Yeah, there we go. Roy Wood Jr. boat cosigner. Just YouTube that one day.
All right.
It's posted 7 years ago. There's a lot of people bootlegging my shit. God bless them. So I called the guy and I go, I said, yeah, man, your boat can't be in the front yard. Homeowners Association. It's ugly. Also, it's an ugly boat. You probably can't catch fish in that boat. I bet you ain't worth a damn in that boat. My boat's better than your boat. What model year is that? You broke bitch. I got a 20. Like he may have had a 07. I'll just say I got a 08. So when you look at the psychology of, especially if it's a man, now it's I'm attacking your ego.
Right,
so it's
right.
easy to get an emotional rise out of you that way. So psychologically, the prank calls, if you're doing one of those two things, then it doesn't matter what your react. Like the impossible, I give you an example of impossible request. There's a prank, and I know this one is on YouTube. I don't even have to check. It's called Chickens in the Dryer. Chickens in the dryer. And I called multiple laundromats and I said, hey, I run a chicken restaurant. I got a big catering order to fill. My rotisserie machine just broke. Can I put my chickens in the dryer there to slow cook them? I know your dryer gets up to 180 degrees. That's hot enough to cook a chicken. And then you just push back from the phone and wait to hear what they say.
Right. And then you react and you're defending and you're pushing.
There you go. No, you can't do that. Why not? There's no law. It's not illegal.
Right. Right.
And so the worst thing that can happen in any type of prank like that is somebody agrees with you and says, sure, bring him down here. Because now it's not funny because you just said, yeah, that's fine. And those are the people who usually know it's a prank call. But
right.
Yeah, that was fun to be a part of. But I'd say from those years of doing prank phone calls, I just developed kind of a bit of an improv muscle of just quick back and forth. Because once you're in it and you're going back and forth with someone, there's no script. It's just it's almost an improv game where I have a goal.
Right.
And you are an obstacle to the goal. So no matter what you say, I'm trying to figure out another way.
Right.
Hey, man, I just got out of jail. I need to talk to your wife to tell her I still love her. Impossible request.
Yeah, right.
Now you're gonna get pissed.
Yeah, right.
You got that one's called that one's not online anymore. But hey, I just got out of jail. Can I talk to your wife? What you need to talk to my wife for? Well, first off, who are you? I'm her husband. That's cool. For now, you are. Anyway, I need to talk to your wife. Now, and that's I could ride a motherfucker for 4 minutes off that one question.
Right, right. Now, how much of the joy is letting him off the hook? Is that a big part of it?
Oh, that's the most important part because that guarantees I don't get my ass whooped, bro.
Right.
Like that's how I guarantee survival. There's a guy, motherfucking Cleveland, ran up on me at the merch table after a show because I pranked him 3 months prior, and he was still pissed about it. He was still pissed, and he came up to the table, and he just goes, "Motherfucker, I just want to let you know that if I wanted to touch your ass, I could touch your ass." And he walked away. And like that was it. And I was like, oh shit, okay. Okay, this shit is real. But yeah, you're not thinking in those days. You're just thinking about the laugh because you're trying to survive in a very competitive radio market. So you need the best content. So every day I will walk in that production room at 6:30 in the morning and call people and say vile things because I needed something on air by 7:05.
Right.
And I've got 30 minutes.
Right.
And really I only got 15 because I need the back half of the hour to edit. So
that's right.
We got 15 minutes to yell, and then I've got 15 minutes to edit. And then this has to go on the air. Now, Sink or swim. This is airing at 7:05.
I got to go back and ask you. You said that's what you did for like the first couple years. You took the albums into the Turtles Records or whatever, and then what happened?
Yeah,
what was the model after that? Then it morphed because people.
Yeah, I'd gotten a deal. I was stupid, and I signed it for my third album. I signed a deal with the entertainment label. And they distributed the album, but then they also didn't do any real push to get me in stores.
Right.
And It's fucked up because from a quality of album standpoint, it is the best album I ever did for as far as prank calls are concerned, but it got the least reach
Right. Because
because
they're
you
not
had
hustling
label
like you
politics.
were. Yeah. You were going
Yeah,
in and out of
yeah,
stores, pushing on the radio.
yeah. But you thought that's the big deal. You get a record deal and they give you an advance, and man, that's when you make it. Man, I ain't
Yeah,
getting
right.
another fucking dime from Image Entertainment off of that shit. So it is what it is.
It's great to talk to you, man. Is there anything else you
Yeah,
want to
man.
throw in here? Can we plug
No,
something for
man.
you?
I got nothing, bro. I got nothing,
It's
man.
2020.
Just
You got your head down. You're working on shit.
yeah, I'm working fucking Daily Show, 11 o'clock, Comedy Central. Fuck with us.
What a great credit, man. You'll always have that forever. Are you gonna hang around there for a while?
Yeah, it's a pandemic and ain't no road work. So as long as Trevor Noah want me around, yeah, motherfucker, I'll stay and kick it.
Yeah, that's good. It's great,
Yeah,
man.
man.
Thanks for doing this. It's good to talk to
Cool,
you
man.
for a few beats.
All
Think
good,
about
brother.
think about the old days. All right, check out Roy Wood Jr. He's very funny on Twitter. That's one last compliment I want to give you, man. One thing you do really well. I actually used you as an example when I was talking to my wife recently. I'd like to hear you tell me briefly, how much do you try to be your own voice? Like on Twitter, when I read your tweets, I can hear you say them. There's a real art to that. Did you decide early that you were going to do it that way? Is that just something that was the natural
I
choice?
just try to make it conversational. I think people who know me hear it that way, but if you don't know me, then you'll read it in a way that's funny to you, which is the
Okay.
thing that I kind of like about Twitter is that you can leave things to people's imaginations and they'll plug in what they think is the funniest version of that particular thing. I would have to scroll through to give an example, but
Right.
yeah, I have a good time just trying to catch the vibe of what people are already talking about and just add a quick little sidebar conversation and use the pictures and the gifs,
Yeah. Yeah,
whatever the
but
fuck.
it's the words. I mean,
Those help.
we used to say it when I worked with Ricky Smiley. We used to say flavor. This sketch needs a little more flavor. But you got a lot of flavor in your tweets. That's all I'm saying. It's really
Yeah.
well done, man.
Well, fucking thank you, man. Appreciate it. At Roy Wood Jr. Then, damn
I
it. Follow
just
me
put the
over
banner
there.
up at Roy
Hell
Wood
yeah.
Jr. Check him out and give him a follow.
Yeah, man.
Thanks so much, man. I'll talk to you down the road someday. Maybe
Will
we
do,
can
man.
tell some jokes together somewhere and
Yes,
wherever
yes,
we
man.
wind up.
All right, man. Happy pandemic.
Yes. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll talk to you again next week on Tuesday at 9 p.m. with Jason Hofsetz, producer from the Bob and Tom Show. Good night, everybody.